we have Dr. P. Rammanohar as our speaker for this session. Yoga is a contemplative practice that aims at the integration of mind, body, and spirit to cultivate a state of equilibrium, harmony, and a sense of awareness. Ayurveda in Sanskrit comprises of two words, Ayu, that is life, and Veda, that is knowledge. In other words, it is a knowledge system that aims at holistic well-being to lead a healthy and fulfilling life. Therefore, yoga and Ayurveda are complementary practices that offer us transformative tools for promoting greater health and vitality. It's a great pleasure and a privilege for me to introduce Dr. P. Rammanohar. Dr. P. Rammanohar is the Research Director of Amrita School of Ayurveda. He received his BA MS degree from Bhartiyar University, Coimbatore in 1991 and MD in Ayurveda from Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, Bangalore in 2001. He has been contributing to the field of Ayurvedic research for the last 30 years and has traveled to many countries around the globe for the promotion of Ayurveda. He has to his credit about 100 publications with research papers published in SCI research journals and various chapters for the books. Among the many awards that he has received, in 2017, Indian Association for Study of Traditional Asian Medicine bestowed the Dr. C. Dwarkanath Memorial Award to him for his contribution to research in Ayurveda. He was the principal investigator on the Indian side of National Institutes of Health USA sponsored study to scientifically evaluate the efficacy of Ayurveda in rheumatoid arthritis. He has also served as principal investigator for projects granted by Department of Ayush, Indian National Science Academy, and the Coconut Development Board. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ram Manohar, who will share his insights on yoga and Ayurveda. Over to you, sir.
Namaste. I would like to first of all thank Ashish Pandeyji for the kind invitation. It's a great honor and pleasure to be present here today and share my views on the connections between yoga and Ayurveda. So at the outset, I would like to initiate this discussion by offering prayers to Patanjali, which this prayer also sets the framework for our discussion today. Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyagena yopaharottam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjali ranatosmi. So this verse, which is a prayer to Patanjali, actually is a vision of synthesis of, yoga and Ayurveda. In fact, integration of the body, the mind, in terms of our human abilities for expressing in this world, bringing harmony in thought, word, and speech. So Patanjali is being, offered the gratitude for having brought out this refinement in the human instrument so that, we are made capable of achieving an inner transformation to realize and experience a higher level of consciousness. So this verse actually points out that the goal of language, the goal of yoga practices, and the goal of Ayurveda were all, converging to one, common goal. And this is basically a process of inner transformation. And I think that is the focus when you talk about Ayurveda or yoga. It's not just about studying something objectively. I mean, today we really talk about research. It so happens that we become so objective that, what we are studying becomes something outside of us. That is what the extreme, involvement in objectivity leads us to. But yoga and Ayurveda also takes us to a world of subjective experiences where we are ourselves the object of study. And this is the most challenging part of knowledge systems like yoga and Ayurveda, which has the subjective component and also this focus on self-development and self-evolution. And in this framework, I would like to start with some initial thoughts. Like in yoga, Patanjali says that yoga is the state of chitta vritti nirodha, in which the mind, the turbulence of the mind has been quietened. And I would like to characterize this as a state of inner silence. And I would like to point out here, like from an Ayurvedic point of view, the silence does not mean that we are absolutely quiet and motionless. It's more like, the elimination of noise in our mind so that that signal of true awareness, of true consciousness is kind of expressed with great clarity. So this is the silence that yoga talks about. This is silence that Ayurveda talks about. This is the silence that even Sanskrit is leading us to. And I think Sanskrit is something which also links up yoga and Ayurveda together in this journey, because the goal of yoga, the goal of Sanskrit, and the goal of Ayurveda is to take ourselves into that deep inner state of silence where the signal of a higher consciousness, we are attuned to it, in a profound way. And that attunement actually brings about a tremendous transformation at a very deep level of our inner being. And this is where all these three disciplines actually merge together. So yoga is in fact the discovery that even to have a basic state of blissfulness or happiness, we need to quieten our mind. And normally we do this regularly. Even addictions, our engagement with sense objects is actually to fulfill this goal. Because at that point, when we are engaged with an object of desire, our mind is quietened and that inner bliss actually comes forth. This is the discovery of yoga, that we can achieve this without, being connected to the sense objects. Because sense objects are not really the cause of our happiness. It is the quietening of the mind, the reduction of this inner noise. This is what yoga talks about. And Sanskrit is also focused on the same thing. I mean, this is why we call Sanskrit is the language of silence. In our tradition, if you ask a question, which is the best language, I mean, most people who have this Indic orientation would want to say that Sanskrit is the best language. But our tradition never said that. Sanskrit is not the best language. The best language is silence, maunam. The most profound wisdom in our tradition has been transmitted, without any external speech. Maunam vyakhya prakadita parabrahma tattvam yuvanam. It means that when we are attuned to this higher level of consciousness, communication happens spontaneously, even without speech. That is that height of awareness, which yoga is also trying to help us achieve. Sanskrit is also. So Sanskrit is one of the most refined languages because it takes us into that state of inner silence. A muni is a person who is doing manana. Mananat muni. Munir bhavam maunam. So maunam is the bhava of a muni. And Sanskrit is a language that forces us into a state of manana. And through that manana, we achieve that munir bhavam, which is maunam. And in that maunam, we are able to tune in to this higher level of consciousness. If you come to Ayurveda, in Ayurveda, this is explained in a slightly different way. So this is the beauty of it. These three disciplines actually look at our personality in a multidimensional way. And we can relate it to it at the level of consciousness we are trapped in. Like if we are in a very physical body consciousness, then Ayurveda is the way to start our journey, because Ayurveda relates our experiences to the body consciousnesses in which we are grounded. And this is what I want to also focus today, that Ayurveda is an enabler of yoga. Ayurveda is actually preparing us for yoga and a higher spiritual experience. I've always felt it as a paradox that in modern age, we have put the cart before the horse. I mean, yoga has jumped forward even before Ayurveda. Yoga has become a global phenomenon. Ayurveda is lagging behind. There is also a little bit of danger here. This means that people who are not adequately prepared for yoga are entering into that arena. So now we are also doing an effort to actually, bring Ayurveda, World Ayurveda Day also, which is very, very important, because unless we move through the path of Ayurveda, when I say Ayurveda, it does not mean, swallowing some pills or kashayams or decoctions. I mean, just like yoga has been misunderstood to be a set of physical exercises, and we have also modified the asanas now into dances and just physical expressions. Ayurveda is also grossly misunderstood as just the kashayams or gutikas or bhasmas that we take. But Ayurveda is a whole philosophy, a profound, as the word as was rightly mentioned. Ayurveda is the process through which life becomes aware of itself. Ana purusho yasmar ayur vindati vetticha. Through which life becomes aware of itself and actualizes its higher potential. That is the definition. So there is a clear definition in the text that this is the process of enablement, of that facilitation of this higher process of evolution, which Ayurveda aims to do. And in Ayurveda, this whole Chittavritti Nirodha is explained in a totally different way. We are here talking about emotional stability. The first verse in a celebrated textbook of Ayurveda called Ashtanga Hridayam begins as Ragadi Rogan Satadanushaktan Asheshagaya Prasradana Sheshana Utsukya Moha Ratidanjakana Yopurva Vaidyaya Namostu Tasme. So who is the Apurva Vaidya, or the physician par excellence? Is the one who quietens the mind and makes it free from the Kamadi Vikaras, the 6 enemies of the mind. So what I wanted to say is that this is in Ayurveda considered as the ultimate medicine and ultimate health. So Ayurveda brings this state of evolution. In Ayurveda, the definition of health is not just some normal physiological parameters. Of course, dosha samyam is one element of that. And arogyam and swasthyam are different. Arogyam means we are just free from diseases. But that's not the goal. The goal is swasthyam. Swasthyam means swastha, swasthasya avastha. This means swasmin sthiyate iti swastha. You are not healthy until you have, risen up to that state of higher awareness. That is health. So this is the beauty of it. How Ayurveda links to yoga is by bringing the goal of yoga also into the definition of health. So we would say prasanna atmendriya mana swastha itya bhradeyade. If you do not have that prasannatva of the mind, and that prasannatva of the mind is the state of yoga, in Ayurveda there is a discussion. So I want to also define yoga from that point of view, how Ayurveda looks at it. What is yoga? So in Charaka Samhita Sharirasthana, there is a discussion. What is the state, Vedananam avartanam, when there is no more pain in the human existence? What is that state? Is such a state possible at all? And the text replies, Charaka Samhita replies, Yoge mokshe cha sarvasam Vedananam avartanam. In the state of yoga and in the state of moksha, there is no more pain or Vedana. And the goal of Ayurveda is to take you to the state of yoga and moksha. So this is what Ayurveda calls as the prasada buddhi. So the whole focus, we say this is pratnya. The goal of Ayurveda is to awaken pratnya. And I would like to define pratnya as health intelligence. This is what Ayurveda wants to promote. Not create just new medicines. New diseases will keep coming. The more and more we are at war with our own inner nature and the nature around us, we will continue to produce new diseases. We will need newer and newer medicines. There is no end or limit to this. Ayurveda says that the solution is really to cultivate health intelligence, which we call as pratnya. And only when we fall from that state of inner awareness, when we lose that innate health intelligence, pratnya aparatha is the cause ultimately for all diseases. So, the WHO was talking about health for all by 2080. Now we are into 2020, and this year we are really realizing how, what we have achieved. Because, the goal of health for all, we already realized health is not something that can be packaged into some pills or, commodities that can then be distributed to the society. So they changed. WHO thought about universal healthcare, let everybody get healthcare. And now the pandemic is really, mocking at us. The countries with access to the most advanced healthcare are actually reeling under the pressure of this pandemic. So there is a lesson that we are learning. Like those people who are surviving are the ones who have really taken care of themselves, who have shown some health intelligence to keep their immune system stable. They are the only ones that the virus is sparing this time. So it's a very profound message. There are people in the world who are just being touched by the virus, just like a feather. We don't even know that the virus has come. So it can be as gentle as that. but there are also others who are, struggling and gasping for air in hospitals with ventilators hooked on, and medicine has nothing really to offer. So health intelligence is the way forward, and Ayurveda is actually helping you to awaken this health intelligence, which means health intelligence awakens only when we are able to stabilize our emotions. Unless we have emotional stability, our health intelligence will not awaken. Because Ayurveda says sickness, how does it happen? When your emotions hijack your intelligence, you are laying the foundation for a sickly existence. When the intelligence controls your emotions, then you are laying the foundation for a healthy existence. So in Ayurveda and in yoga, the ultimate goal is self-transformation. I mean, this is the problem today, even when yoga is, we are reducing it to very purely physical dimensions. We are still not bringing into that state of, self-awareness, self-empowerment, achieving that deeper harmony with the whole of creation, which is what Ayurveda defines as health. So I don't think there is any medical system in the world which says that what is health? Health is a state of awareness in which you feel you are one within yourself and with the entire universe. There is no health system which has defined health in this way. Sarvalogam atmanya atmanam cha sarvaloke samam anupashyata satya buddhir utpadyate. So Ayurveda says without this feeling of oneness, no diplomacy, no politics can ever bring peace in the world. Why do we need peace? Because this whole universe is the expression of one consciousness. This is yoga. This is Ayurveda. Because there was once a question by a student to a teacher, is the universe interconnected? And the teacher said, absolutely not. The universe is not interconnected. There are no connections. The student was very surprised. So he said, what do you mean? So are we all separate? He said, the teacher said that if there should be a connection, there should be two. When there is only one, how can there be a connection? So this is the idea of oneness that we see embodied in yoga and in Ayurveda. So even in the Rig Veda, we have this whole idea, the song of unity, sam gachadvam, sam vadatvam, samvo manamsi janatam. And that state of samatva is what Ayurveda is also taking you to. But here, Ayurveda offers us a lot of practical tools. What I wanted to say is that the more we are at the level of physical consciousness, the more Ayurveda is going to be helpful. Because this is the beauty of our cultural tradition. We knew that we had to reach a very, very lofty, high goal, but we were also very, very much aware that, at the ground level, we need to start from where we are. So even though the destination is the same, the starting point is different. I mean, we have to start from where we are. And that is where Ayurveda comes in. Ayurveda helps us to recognize, at what level of consciousness we are existing, so that we can start from that right starting point, without which, our journey will not move forward. Most of us waste our time trying to find out what is the starting point. I mean, we know the goal, but we get, lost because we do not know how we must start. So Ayurveda says our physical constitution, our mental constitution are different. Although we are all made of the same ingredients. Ingredient-wise, we are same at the physical level, but we are configured differently. So we have the physical constitution, we have the mental constitution, we have what we inherit from our parents, from the society that we live. All these things come together to create a complex personality. And that complex personality is our starting point. And Ayurveda is like a mirror. The first thing it tells you is to find out who you are. What is your unique position? Every individual is like a fingerprint. We are unique. Even though we are interconnected and we collapse into one unity, as we move from the physical plane to more subtler planes, we all collapse into that one unified consciousness. But at the surface, there is a difference. And it's very, very important for us to understand this difference, because what one person needs to do, even in terms of the food, this is, I think, the real beauty of what yoga is actually more focused on that unification process, whereas Ayurveda is more focused on the differences, so that it enables us to start from that reference point. Because without understanding the differences, we cannot really, move to that higher level of unity. So this is how really Ayurveda and yoga, comes together and creates a perfect balance for self-development. So the second point is that once we see ourselves as a mirror, Ayurveda shows you who you are in a relative sense, not in an absolute sense. So Ayurveda tells you who you are from a relative point of view, whereas yoga tells you who you are from an absolute point of view. And the whole point is, if you do not know your relative identity, you cannot discover your absolute identity. So once you know who you are, Ayurveda tells you how to live your life so that this process of self transformation can be kick-started. The way you wake up, from the point of time you wake up to the time you sleep, what type of food you eat, what type of activities you indulge in, it should be in tune with your own prakriti, with your own constitution. And once that harmony is achieved, this process of self evolution unfolds automatically and takes you into the path of yoga. So some of the points that I want to say is, that is why in Ayurveda there's so much of emphasis given to diet, so much of emphasis given to the lifestyle that you have to follow. It's all depending on your, so what is good for one person will not be good for another individual. Even yoga has to be actually customized for it to be really effective. Unless this customization and individualization happens, we cannot proceed further. So I want to also point out another small, story. This is of a guru and a disciple again. The guru one day asks the disciple, "Who are you?" And the disciple says, "I'm so and so." And then the guru says, "I did not ask your name, I asked you who you are." And then the disciple again replies, "I am the son of so and so." And then the guru says, "I didn't ask you who your father was. I'm asking you who you are." And then he tells his mother's name, his country, his relations, his job. Every time the guru tells that, "I did not ask who your friend was, who your father is, what your job is. I'm asking you who you are." And then finally the disciple gets frustrated and asks him, "Are you pulling my leg?" And then the guru says, "I just wanted you to realize that in order to define who you are, you needed to always look at something outside of you. Without your father, without your mother, without your country, you had no identity of yourself. Now leave them all. Just go into yourself. Don't cling on to any external props. Just look at who you are. And then what you discover is your true nature." So what I wanted to say is that we are always, conditioned. Our personality is the result of a conditioning by external circumstances. And this conditioning is necessary for us to, engage in this world of affairs. And Ayurveda is actually helping us to come to terms with this conditioned personality of ours, which I would call is like a mask which we have to wear, when we are living in this world. So the whole idea is Ayurveda helps you to recognize that this is only a mask. And that it's not saying that you don't need this, relative identity of yourself, but you must realize that is the cut-off point. The moment you realize that my real true personality is something much deeper, it's a deeper inner consciousness. And what I have understood as myself is a result of a conditioning by time and space, which I need to handle, which I need to also accept. But the moment I know that it is a mask that I am wearing, then the whole life changes. And this is how Ayurveda enables you to bring about a big inner transformation. And for this, your doshas need to be in balance. The gunas in your mind need to be in balance. And Ayurveda gives you, so I also, usually we say, Ayurveda takes you from illness to wellness. You need a certain state of relative stability of both your body as well as of your mind to be able to, go to the stage of yoga. Yoga takes you from wellness to stillness. So Ayurveda is from illness to wellness, and yoga takes you from wellness to stillness. So I want to tell some practical things. In Ayurveda, it has been told that pranayama should not be done. I was very shocked to see this. And when I looked at the commentaries and descriptions, it was said that unless your nadis are completely cleansed, you don't prepare yourself well, doing pranayama will actually cause stress for the vata because it's not able to move freely. Your channels are all clogged. So without that shuddhi, so in Ayurveda, we have measures like panchakarma, We have herbs and medicines which enable to cleanse the gross channels, so that you reach a stage where you can work on the subtle channels, cleanse them, and then when you do pranayama, there is a transformation. I have also seen a lot of people who are doing these practices without proper guidance. They get sometimes mental illnesses, they get neurological problems, and these are also described in Ayurveda. Even in yoga, there is the Ashtanga yoga. That is why I think that was created, to create this whole structured way of self-evolution. The stages or the karma is very, very important. So we have the Shat karmas in yoga, which are aimed at cleansing the deeper channels, whereas in Panchakarma in Ayurveda aims at cleansing the gross channels. So when you are doing a practice of Ayurveda first, you are into Ayurvedic way of life, then yoga becomes spontaneous, effortless. Today, yoga, that is why yoga is not developing, because when we reach these obstacles, people stop. So we bring down yoga to our level. That is what is happening in the modern world. We are bringing down yoga to our level of consciousness, dancing, singing, and this is all we can do because the body is not willing to transform to a higher stage. Ayurveda prepares you for that. The word aushadha in Ayurveda, we call translated as medicine. Aushadha means a osha, pakaha, which means a burning transformation of the life fluid in such a way that it expresses dhi or a higher consciousness. So even the physical medicine that you take in Ayurveda is aimed at awakening a higher consciousness, which prepares you for the practice of yoga. So this is, I think, to put things into a nutshell, Ayurveda is basically laying the foundation for this transformation of consciousness. And even Rasayana, the Rasayana treatments in Ayurveda, today when you talk about Rasayana, we think of Chavanaprasha, but we don't think of yoga. But when we study Ayurveda, the Charaka Samhita clearly says, Na kevalam dirgham ihayurasnute. You don't just get a long life. Rasayanam yo vidhivan nishevade. One who takes Rasayana according to the rules will not just get long life. That's not the goal. Gatim sa devarshi nishevitam shubham prapadyade brahma tathedi chakshe. The one who takes Rasayana in the correct way, according to Ayurveda, actually achieves a transformation of consciousness and attains the highest state which were attained by the rishis. So what I wanted to say, coming back to Ayurveda, what is yoga? Yoga is a state of mind in which you are not affected in any way by any adverse circumstances. It's a state of inner balance. Like in Bhagavad Gita, it has been explained, Yasmin sthito na dukkhena bahuna api na vichalyate tam vidyad dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga samchitam. So you cannot claim yourself to be in a state of yoga if you are in that state of yoga. You are not affected even by the most impactful event in your life, which should actually put you into a state of sorrow. When you are not affected, that is when you can say that you have attained the state of yoga, which is what in Ayurveda is also called as swasthya. Because once you know that your engagement with the world, that world of relative existence, is just like wearing a mask. That's a role that you have to play, according to the rules of dharma. You reach that state of equipoise. This is health according to Ayurveda. This is the state of yoga according to Yoga Shastra, the ultimate kaivalya. And this is the mauna, or the state of inner silence, that even the language Sanskrit is leading us to. So this is the point where, and I'm seeing that there are some questions which are much more at the mundane level. There was one question on, how are there valid instruments or method to assess tridoshas, whether there are measures of swasthyam. There is also a question related to ashwagandha on COVID-19. I would love to answer them, but this is not really the focus of our discussion today. But if there is time at the end, I can respond to those questions very briefly. I would also like to know how much more time I have, because should I conclude in the next 5 minutes? Or?
Not necessarily, sir. I am seeing there's a lot of interest. I'm also seeing a lot of comments. People are thoroughly enjoying. So And you are the last speaker of the session. So
Okay. So if you can give me a hint how much time, then I can just,
maybe
plan
10, 15 minutes is not at all a
Okay.
problem. Yeah.
Okay.
15 minutes.
Yes. So there are also a lot of interesting science, coming out, which lends support. I don't think everything in Ayurveda or yoga can be kind of, scientifically proven, because it goes beyond the limits of science. But then certain points, since I've also seen these kind of questions coming up about proof and all that, there are interesting studies which also shows how the practice of yoga, the practice of Ayurveda, and the use of Sanskrit is bringing about change to even our physical apparatus, like the brain. I was, as a student of Sanskrit, I was also fascinated to see a study that was done in India. It's published in Current Science, of how even looking at the alphabets in Sanskrit has a profound impact on your brain. Like if you read Sanskrit through English letters, and if you read it through the Devanagari script, your brain responds in a very different way. So everything is transformative. And this is the moment I realized that the word Sanskrit is so meaningful. It means, all other languages are known by the place where it is spoken. French in France, German in Germany, even Hindi in Hindustan, and Kannada in Karnataka, Telugu in Andhra. All these are known by the place where the language is spoken. But Sanskrit is having a very neutral name, connotation. It's called Samskritam. Samskritam means refinement. So this is a profound goal of that language, is to refine our instrument so that we can evolve to a higher consciousness. And this study done by the researchers in India found they had two groups. One group read the same Sanskrit passage, but they read in the English diacritical script. Today it is becoming very fashionable to represent Ayurveda using the diacritical, script in English, Roman letters, Roman transliteration. But the other group read the same passages in actual, Devanagari script. And when they looked at the functional MRI, they found that there's a big difference. People who read Sanskrit in the English script had very few areas, one-sided stimulation of their brain, whereas the group which read in the Devanagari script, there was more, activity in the brain. It looked like reading Sanskrit, even from the script, was itself like kind of a brain massage. So this made me also realize, before we started studying Ayurveda, this was a very important thing. In modern medicine, we don't do this. Chanting was so important in our tradition. We have to read the text, before we start discussing. And there would also be a chanting session. And this suddenly opened up my mind. I realized that, this was done traditionally, this pata of the text, like a warming up exercise. When you do that, your brain is stimulated. You are, without really physically massaging it, these sounds, these thought patterns are actually activating your brain and leading you to that state of consciousness where you can actually grasp the meaning of the text. All my teachers used to say that if you don't chant first before discussing, you will not understand the text. I thought it was superstition. There was also a study, by an Italian scientist at the University of Trento, where this has been published also as the Sanskrit effect, that they clearly found that Sanskrit Pandits chanting, portions from the Shukla Yajurveda, there was a physical change in the brain. The areas associated with memory, emotional control, they were actually seen to have hypertrophy, showing a change in the brain capacity. So these kind of changes are visible. These are actually shadows. Today, we think of the shadows as the real thing. What science is seeing is only the shadows of a higher reality. But we are giving more importance to the shadow. We are able to see only the shadows, and we say scientific. So we are living, we, get lost in a shadowy world. But sciences like Ayurveda, knowledge systems like Ayurveda and yoga is telling us what is it that casting that shadow. That is the real, reality. So after a while, the shadows will disappear. We will be only in that reality. And that is where science will also kind of just disappear. We will no longer be able to do a scientific investigation. There are also other things, chemical changes that happen when we do Ayurveda and yoga. In Ayurveda, we say we need ojas. Ojas is something which makes the mind happy. If you are having abundant ojas in your system, you cannot but smile. So good diet, good lifestyle, and proper rasayana can actually make you into a state where you cannot become unhappy. One of the definitions of health in Ayurveda is being happy without any reason. Today, our biggest problem is we need a reason to be happy. It makes sense. It makes sense to say, that why are you unhappy? In our tradition, we always used to ask, why is there any reason to be unhappy? We never asked, are you happy? Sariro manaso vapi kachidenam na bathade. Are you being affected by any sorrow, body or mind? Because your natural state is to be happy. So there should be no reason for you to be, happy. There could be a reason for you to be unhappy. And there are so many reasons for that. But today, what we call as mental sickness, this, according to Ayurveda and yoga, is a state of mental sickness where we need some reason to be happy. So in our tradition, we had only accepted, okay, if you have a reason to be unhappy, that's fine. Durlabham is sada sukham. Sada sukham is durlabham. So there is a reason something is affecting you. But in the state of yoga, you're not affected by anything. And that is why Ayurveda is also taking you to that state of yoga by defining health as sukham. Sukha samjnagam arogya. When you are happy, for no reason. Sukham means sushtukha. The space around you is auspicious. There is no obstruction. Your life flows. You are one with nature. You're just flowing. Every moment of your life is an expression of that inner truth, of that inner consciousness. And that is what creates a bliss inside you, and you can also spread that bliss around. And I want to also mention a few things about the neurochemicals of happiness, the shadows of modern science, how we can see the shadows of the state through chemistry. It is well known that if you practice yoga, so this is how Ayurveda helps. At a physical level, even the mudras, the way you sit, the way Ayurveda says sitting is like killing yourself. If you want to sit continuously, you must be doing yoga. Otherwise, don't sit. Because when you sit, the flow of your prana is obstructed. Asya sukham, swapna sukham, dadhini. This is considered Asya sukham was described in Ayurveda thousands of years ago as the cause of many diseases, including diabetes. Today, modern scientists are telling us that sitting is the new smoking. In fact, they say you smoke, but don't sit, because sitting is even more harmful than smoking. Every half an hour, every 90 minutes. Now, what we need to have is a movement break. Our whole concept of break has changed. Because earlier, a break was to rest and relax. Today, our activity has become so, mental. We have lost that balance of body and mind. The Ayurveda and yoga says that your body should be active and mind should be still. But today we are doing the opposite. Our bodies are still and our mind is active. Our mind is completely sitting in front of a computer day from morning to evening, full of emotions and turbulence. We look like a yogi, we look like a pseudo yogi because we are sitting still, the whole day. But what's going on in our mind, it's really hell. So Ayurveda says that your body should be physically active, whereas your mind should be still. That is the secret of meditation. To be mentally still, even when you are in the middle of, the most engaging action. I think this is so beautifully depicted in the imagery of the Bhagavad Gita, that how can you be active, but still meditating. And that is the state of health which Ayurveda is also talking about. So there are, I see a lot of questions coming, but maybe I'll finish in the next few minutes so that maybe we can take some questions. What Ayurveda says, as I was mentioning, the way you sit. If you sit in a yogasana, the yogasana is designed in such a way that there is no block in the flow of prana. So the moment the pranic flow stops, there is stress in your mind. So even when you sit in a sukhasana or padmasana, it takes some time to practice that. But the idea is that the channels of the body are made into a kind of circuit so that there is no disturbance in the flow of prana. When that happens, you will not have the harm of the normal sitting, like sitting with our ergonomic chairs, comfort, We do all the kind of, now the chairs are doing yogasana. We are not doing yogasana. So that is why we developed this pot belly and all that sitting in the modern offices. The chairs have become yogis, whereas we have become bhogis. So instead of, so traditionally we would sit, because our muscles, our bones, that is a typical posture of a yogi, not sitting on a chair. It's a bold statement that I can support my own body, I can support my mind just by discovering that right pose and allowing prana to flow continuously. So these things have an impact. When you do yoga, there is something that happens physically in your body. There is a chemical that increases, the secretion of a particular chemical increases. It's called GABA. GABA is an anti-anxiety molecule. So the more you practice yoga, the less you will have anxiety. I mean, if you practice it properly, it completely changes your disposition towards life. So now science is beginning to discover that. If you keep certain goals in your life, you achieve them, then serotonin is called as the happiness hormone. It naturally increases. So I have found through this correlation that many of the practices that Ayurveda talks about in terms of lifestyle, in terms of diet, have a direct bearing on the neurochemicals of happiness. So if you just run, there is a chemical called endocannabinoid. And it's very interesting. This molecule is called bliss molecule. And this is the only amongst these neurochemicals of happiness which is known by a Sanskrit name. It's called Anandamide. And I think it's because no other culture or tradition in the world has invented a term for Ananda. I think only Sanskrit knows what is Ananda. No other language, they call it bliss, but the definition of Ananda is coming from such a deep yogic experience that there is no other word. Probably this is the coincidence that even modern scientists, there's a nice story of how the scientist coined this word Anandamide. He's a scientist from Israel. So they found this endocannabinoid receptor in the human body. And so that led them to the conviction, this body can do self-addiction. We don't need ganja from outside. Body knows somewhere to produce this molecule, so you can have your own inner high. I mean, you don't need to take anything from outside. That is what this. So this Israeli scientist was searching for this molecule. Many others were doing it. He came to Aurobindo Ashram once. And while he was at the Aurobindo Ashram, he had a premonition that, I would be the one who's going to discover this molecule. So here I am inspired in India, in Aurobindo Ashram. So I'm going to call this molecule as Anandamide. So he named this molecule years before he actually discovered it. And the interesting thing is that he turned out to be the person who actually discovered the molecule, and he promptly named it as Anandamide. So that is how this molecule came to have the name in Sanskrit. That's the only chemical which is known by a Sanskrit name, the bliss molecule. And how do we increase this bliss molecule in your body? If you can wake up in the morning and run, then your endocannabinoids will increase. If you really run very well and come back, then you will be very blissful. The whole chemistry changes. If you hug each other, then oxytocin increases. Maybe in cultures where the people are more aggressive, they have brought this system of hugging. Because once after you hug, it's very difficult to fight with each other. So cultures which are more, aggressive, that is the reason why maybe this system came in. If you, set some specific, if you reward yourself, self-encouragement, this is so important. If you reward yourself, there is a molecule called dopamine, which gets released, which makes you, extrovert and happy and not depressed. So what we have understood is that Ayurveda brings and gives you this physical dimension. Ayurveda connects. I think if you look at science and spirituality, yoga is fully on the side of spirituality. Although we are doing a lot of research work and all that, I'm sure that the higher goals of yoga cannot be understood by any scientific research. I myself am a very passionate researcher and involved in science, but I think yoga is just beyond that. Ayurveda is the link between science and spirituality in my humble understanding and experience, because Ayurveda looks at these two dimensions. And when you bring Ayurveda into the picture, we have a perfect interface, a perfect bridge to take us from this physical world to the metaphysical, to that higher level of consciousness. And that is why Ayurveda is known as Ayurveda. All other traditional systems, including modern medicine, is referred to as Western medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, traditional European medicine, traditional African medicine. But even today, Ayurveda is, even India, even though we have the Ayush, all those things, we have not converted Ayurveda into traditional Indian medicine for many, many reasons. But I think it should remain that way. Ayurveda is Ayurveda because it is the awareness of life. Wherever there is biodiversity, there will be Ayurveda. Wherever humans interact with nature, the knowledge of Ayurveda will sprout. That was a vision of our rishis. And I think that is why Ayurveda is still Ayurveda. The moment it becomes TIM, TIM, very soon it will also become dim. I mean, its whole power will be lost. So I would like to conclude by saying that Ayurveda is an enabler, of yoga, of a higher life, of inner transformation, and fulfillment in the awareness of a higher consciousness. And I think Ayurveda should be brought along with yoga, for yoga to be also more powerful and transformative. So with these words, I will conclude. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I hope that I was able to, give some glimpses of how Ayurveda can, make yoga more fulfilling and complete. Thank you very much.
Ashish sir, you need to unmute yourself.
Thanks very much, Dr. Rammanohar. Whenever I have had opportunity of interacting with you, you have always been so insightful and full of knowledge, very generously sharing your knowledge. That's how I have experienced you. So thanks very much for making yourself available. It's a Sunday, and doctors are busier on Sundays, so still you could find time. Thanks very much for that. Yoga works on the oneness, and the Ayurveda looks after the individual differences. Such a fantastic distinction, along with many, many other distinctions you have shared with us. In the group, this group itself has a lot of wisdom in it, a lot of yoga practitioners. Some of them must be knowledgeable about Ayurveda as well. Many of the members over here are Sanskrit scholars. And many are the young scholars. So I hope that this talk will inspire some of you to come together or to pursue this line of work where not at all any work has happened in a proper scientific term. I'm going to share what is the scientific, what is the meaning of scientific when I say scientific. But I hope this session will inspire the young scholars to pursue this line of work. There are some questions about what is the scientific research. We need to understand that scientific not only means objective, scientific not only means analytical, more positivist. Science has to be understood in its broader sense. Interpretivism is also a science. It is now accepted. Systems thinking or systems knowledge or systems perspective is also a science which is not based on the basic assumption of ceteris paribus, keep studying the impact of one variable over other, considering all other variables constant. So systems thinking is also a science. Analytical thinking is also a science, but interpretive thinking is also a science in itself. Kane Wilber gives an interesting heuristic to look at it. He talks about eye of spirit, eye of mind, and eye of flesh. There is a way of looking at things, what we call eye of flesh, which is more a physical reality. Then eye of mind, which is of a mental reality. So, and then eye of spirit, which is about the transcendental experience and the reality associated with that. We need to choose the appropriate instrument. If we are interested in the eye of flesh, we need to choose the instrument related to eye of flesh. If we are interested in the eye of mind, then we need to choose the research instrument which are suitable for the mental reality. And similarly with the appropriate instrument approach should be identified, should be applied for the eye of spirit, matters related to transcendence. So in that way, science also needs to be understood. And in the inaugural address, Mukulji said that it is not, the research is not about validating that yoga is impactful. It is not, research is not about that, or Ayurveda is impactful. It is applying the, looking at, taking the perspective of yoga to understand the modern medicine, or to understand the psychology, or to understand the organizations, or to understand societal, other social realities. So it is, that's what Rajiv says, Ajivnota says, reversing the gauge, not any assertive nationalism. It is not about that. It is about acknowledging our frame of, our epistemology and ontology, and trying to understand the existing phenomena which are being understood, which are being studied in the modern sciences. So fantastic deliberations, Dr. Rammohan. This, I said that this group has a lot of wisdom available, and I wish that many people would have give their observations to your session, but because of the paucity of time, I requested Dr. Rajesh Chandwani. Dr. Rajesh Chandwani is an MD pediatrician, pediatrics by first professional qualification. By the second professional qualification, he's a doctorate in the human resource management from IIM Bangalore, and he's a faculty member and the chairing the Center for Health Management in IIM Ahmedabad. So I request Dr. Chandwani to share his reactions to this session. Thanks very much, Dr. Chandwani.
Thank you, Ashish ji, and thank you so much for allowing me to share my insights after listening to Dr. Ram Manohar. And it was really being educated in modern medicine. We have, in general, I don't think in India any modern medicine practitioner discounts or belittles the importance of traditional medicine, Ayurveda including. We all accept that it's a holistic treatment protocols which need to be developed. Only thing is the science that has developed in such a way, the journals, the gatekeepers of those journals, the overall development of the knowledge does not allow this to happen fruitfully. And for us, initially when I started listening, till now I was thinking that Ayurveda is about initially when I started reading about it or listening to it, it was about using some natural healing traditional thing to heal or cure something. And slowly when we look at the philosophy, it is much beyond that. It is related to the holistic health concept, where it's not only physical health but it's also spiritual, social, emotional health, and all those things are already incorporated. The world which the modern medicine which it realized much later was already there in our scriptures. So I looked at Ayurveda as something which has holistic health in its DNA. Also, I looked at Ayurveda from personalized medicine type of thing. Like in modern medicine, we search for a molecule, like you would have heard in coronavirus. We look for a molecule which can cure coronavirus patients, and we don't differentiate between patients. We say that this molecule is effective against all coronavirus, and that is the pursuit. But but there is a stream of modern medicine which also talks about personalized medicine, where uh, based on the constituency of a person, the medicine should be given. And Ayurveda again already provides this in terms of various doshas which are there in the literature. But today these two things I already always admired about the ancient wisdom. But today from Dr. Ram Manohar, I also came to know that it is to be seen as a path between physical and the spiritual world. Ayurveda is a connect between the two worlds, and that was very much revealing to me. And I thought that will be one major takeaway which I gained today from his talk. And thank you so much, Dr. Ram Manohar. I hope we will meet someday and through Ashish Pandey, I have met lot of people. So I think he will enable me to meet more knowledgeable people like you in the coming years. Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Rammanohar. Thank you so much,
Look
Dr.
forward
Rammanohar.
to meeting.
Thank you so
Look
much.
forward to meeting you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, Chirag for the concluding remarks.
So could we take a few questions, or we are running out of time? So
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
I have actually answered most of the questions, that
Yeah.
came in
okay.
the chat. I have answered. I think almost all of them I answered.
Yes.
Okay, so
So there's one question, interesting question, probably it is sent to me privately. The Ayurveda and the understanding of Panchakosha in Ayurveda, how they are deeply connected or mildly connected, just acknowledged in the Ayurveda, how it is.
Yes. So, the Panchakosha concept in Ayurveda is understood in three levels. When we say Ayurveda, Sattvam, Atma, Shariram, Cha, Trayameda, Tridandavat. So, the Sharira is the Annamaya Kosha. Then the second one is Manas, which is the Manomaya Kosha. And then the Atma, which is the Anandamaya Kosha. For us, the other two koshas are the connectors, actually. So the Pranamaya, the Annamaya Kosha is connected to the Manomaya Kosha through the Pranamaya Kosha. And the Manas is connected to the Atman through the Vijnanamaya Kosha, which we call as Buddhi. So Prana and Buddhi are also there. So the Ayurvedic model is like a compressed version of the Panchakoshas. And our medicines are actually working up to the level of, I could say, on Anandamaya Kosha, nothing can be done. It is just self-existent. But up to the level of awakening, Buddhi, which we call as Pratnya, the Ayurvedic medicines have an action at all these levels. The herbs are working on Annamaya, Pranamaya Kosha, even the Manomaya Kosha, because all medicines in Ayurveda, modern medicine, one of the problems I've seen is also many modern medicine, because they are poisons, you have that therapeutic window of, efficacy. Toxicity is always there because these are refined medicines. They have a negative effect on the mind. Visham Vishadam Janayati. In Ayurveda, we give so much importance that, the medicine should not depress the mind. It should also awaken it. So the effect of the whole activity on all the koshas is really important. But we are using this three-dimensional model instead of a five-dimensional model in yoga. But you can easily expand it and then it becomes the same. This is how I have understood it.
Yeah, this is more of an empirical reality rather than uh, it's more of a heuristic. Ultimately, all these koshas are connected.
Yes.
Because in the Jain system or Buddhist system, there are seven. So seven is not opposite to 3 or 5.
True. That is the thing. So here it's like a model which is more suitable, which you can engage with at that level of reality.
Yeah.
So that's why Ayurveda has made it into a different kind of.
Another, is there any traditional text which actually deals Ayurveda and yoga together?
That's what I have found is that the classical, we don't see really such textbooks where yoga and Ayurveda are, all Ayurvedic texts are just saying that they are preparing. Like the Charaka Samhita is where the yoga philosophy is very clearly explained.
Okay.
Yoga moksha cha sarvasa. And in fact, there was a question also that when you say Malam Sarirasa Vaidyagena, what is the treatise that Patanjali gave for Ayurveda? Actually, Charaka is said to be the incarnation of Patanjali. So the contribution of Patanjali to Ayurveda is Charaka Samhita. And it is in Charaka Samhita that the clearest reference to yoga is. But here yoga is referred to as, a tool for transformation. We don't find all the asanas and other things described there. Yoga as the goal of Ayurveda, that is very clearly explained. And references to not doing pranayama. Mostly we are seeing prohibitions of yoga in Ayurveda. And I was also surprised because it seems that you need a preparation to go to yoga. It's not that Ayurveda was against yoga. Even at one time I was under the impression, is there really a conflict between these two systems? Because there's some discouragement to do yoga. So later I realized that when I put all the pieces together, that Ayurveda was like a preparation for yoga, and they were telling premature engagement in yoga may not give good results. So that is the whole, and that is the reason why I think they have not been discussed together. Because in ancient India, there was astrology was used by Ayurvedic physicians, but not discussed in Ayurveda. No discussion of astrology. Not much. There are some texts, karma vipaga like that, independent, but the classical texts don't discuss much about astrology. So many of these branches, they are called as, vidya kalpana. You bring that vidya from outside. That vidya has an independent existence, and in the actual practice they are integrated, but when you're studying, you don't mix them together. I hope, does it answer the question?
Certainly, very insightful. Thanks very much. Yes,
So,
Chirag.
by your permission, if I can ask one small question, sir.
Yeah.
So, sir, I had the opportunity to read your paper on personality and prakriti, the comparative analysis that you had done.
Yes.
So that is, I see it as a link where we see an application of Ayurveda with respect to organizations, where personality can be, measured based on Ayurveda. So,
Yes.
are there other, topics or probably pointers like Achar Rasayana or Sadvrata, which can be conceptualized and which can have some implication or which can be measured at workplace or in broader spaces?
Yes, it should be actually, because what Ayurveda says is that you have to bring this. The knowledge of personality helps us understand two things: why I am who I am, why somebody else is who they are. Once we know these energies, that Prakriti cannot be changed; it's our inner tendency. So once we know that, we can channelize our energies in a creative way. Like a Vata person will have very creative intelligence, but a Vata person cannot actually implement it or organize it. A Pitta person has a very organizing intelligence. A Kapha person is very good at implementing. So if you find yourself in the wrong place, it will create a big conflict. This is what is happening in many workspaces. The right alignment. Even you can build a team based on this concept. So a Kapha person will not spend energy. He's always conserving. Vata person is a spendthrift. So in an organization, when you bring these energies in the right, balance, then you can find that the functionality will really increase. So all this is very much possible. And there are some, preliminary work that is going on. Prakriti and all that is now just being subjected to new research. Mostly at the biomedical level, CSIR has established a Institute for Ayur Genomics, where this is, but mostly from a genetic point of view. We need also, applications in behavioral sciences, in psychology, and all those things. There is potential, but only very limited exploration has been done. But I think the knowledge of Prakriti can bring human relationships, into a much more, balanced way. Like even, in family, in friends circle, the moment you have a understanding of constitution, you learn to accept other persons. You learn to accept yourself also, and then it all turns to how once you know your uniqueness, how you can channelize those energies. Now, when you were saying about Acharya Rasa and all that, we say that according to the mindset should be the lifestyle. According to the lifestyle should be the diet. We don't put this in proper perspective, because the lifestyle is to work out your mindset. The lifestyle transforms your mindset. So your lifestyle should always be according to your mindset. This is almost always ignored. We are giving some generalized prescriptions to everybody, and that can actually become conflicting for many people. There is no such thing as good or bad lifestyle. For some people, killing some animal or something may be necessary in that stage of life. We have this concept of dharma himsa and kama himsa. Kama himsa is prohibited, but dharma himsa is allowed in Ayurveda as a necessary process, because we say jivo jivasya jivanam. In the whole of nature, in animal life also, one life form, exists on other. So the way you design your lifestyle, what level of engagement you have, it all boils down to an understanding of a deeper nature. It is to emancipate you from that state of mind in which you are, at that particular stage. So even the diet will come according to your lifestyle. So your lifestyle demands what. So this kind of personalization is a big possibility. I think we should try to bring more applications of this, make our place a better place to live in, have better interpersonal human relations, institutional dynamics. These are, I think, definitely things to be explored, but the work is now in a very preliminary stage. Does that answer your question to some extent?
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. So, Thank you very much, sir. On behalf of YOGASTHA and all the participants, I thank you, Dr. Rammanohar, for an enlightening and insightful session on yoga and Ayurveda. Thank you very much for highlighting the significance of inner silence and how Ayurveda is an enabler of yoga, health, intelligence, and oneness. And moreover, how Ayurveda is a bridge between science and spirituality. We look forward to more of your sessions in future. Thank you once again, sir.